Okay, we are live. I have to remove LinkedIn because it's telling me that's not working. So, but none of you really care because you're on Facebook right now. Welcome here this morning. Today I'm here with Craig Knippenberg, a Denver-based mental health therapist and author of Wired and Connected. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, Susan. It's great to be back again.
Yeah, it is great. I want to encourage everybody who's on right now, and we'll remind you later to post comments and we'll share them and get your questions answered. So our topic right now, and maybe we'll take a minute and just let people tell us in the comments where they're coming from so we can get a little bit more of an attendance, because right now, it's jumping. Okay, great. So just if you could go in the comments and tell you where you're signing in from. We'd love to see if you're in sunny weather or miserable. I don't know how the fires are going. How are the fires going right now?
They're still going. It's clear today in Denver, but for the last several weeks, between the Colorado fires and the California fires, we have clouds and ash falls.
How's the weather in Washington State? We have someone, Tanisha, just is signing in from Washington State. I hope the air quality is good out there. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, and we somehow are winning the weather war right now. Not always, but right now I don't want to say it. I don't want to jinx us, but it's going pretty well right now. Oh, good. Raining and sounds beautiful. Oh, that's nice. Good. Okay. So, the topic we're going to cover today is, parents who have their kids either hybrid situations or learning remotely, or even going to school. There's this constant concern that your kids aren't getting their work done, that they're not focused enough, that you're hearing that it's not going well at school. So we're, for some people, just a few weeks into school, and some states start much earlier. Craig, what's your advice to parents right now who are starting to get a sense that things aren't going so well?
Well, welcome to our house. I have a 15-year-old. She started online. She's still online. We were hoping to go back to school, but that hasn't happened. I think you have to consider like some cut points, or like go down a pyramid. And so when your child's struggling, I guess the two categories you put it in is, one, is it related to what's called executive functioning? So that's your attention, organization, time management. Some of the stuff that's online can be confusing for kids, and they have a hard time being organized with it. Then the other side would be, do they really not understand the content? Now, if it's not really understanding the content, then going to your school and saying, hey, maybe this, so my daughter was placed in an AP computer business class and had never had any kind of computer class in her elementary school. She was a private Catholic school. And 2 weeks into it, we realized that, and the school finally goes, oh, she's not supposed to be in that class. She can't understand that. We're like, great, yeah, the different class. So they got her out of that class. Maybe the school, maybe your child needs some tutoring or an IEP or a 504 to get content-specific help. On the organization side, it was interesting, Susan. Last night I was meeting with a sophomore in high school, nice young man, but he started off with like 3 days worth of Fs with a hybrid model. We got way behind. He's getting grounded for a month. He's catching up. And I said to him, what is it? Is it the organizational? And he doesn't have any learning issues. I said, what is it, the organizational stuff, the executive functioning, or is it just motivation? And he said, it's about 50-50. Sometimes I'm lost, I'm confused, I don't know what to do. And other times I can't get motivated to do it. Now, I had a little quick talk with him about, the term lazy or poor motivation. So the one thing you have to remember with teenagers, the main neurochemical that gets us going and motivated is called dopamine. And dopamine starts down your brainstem. It runs through your pleasure area first, novelty and pleasure, and then it goes up to the frontal lobe, what I call the president in my book. And that's where your executive functions are, and impulse control. So if you like the subject, so let's say this young man, I forgot to ask him yesterday, but let's say he loves math. Now, when he goes into his math class, because he likes math, that dopamine levels are going to go up in his pleasure center. And it's also going to tell him to pay more attention. So when humans like something, we have an easier time paying attention to it. I have no problem paying attention to pizza or steak. Those are very pleasurable for me. They get my dopamine levels up. I can focus on that dinner. Give me a bowl of Brussels sprouts, not so much. I'm going to be very unmotivated.
So some of the problem is that, we all know that about ourselves. Like we know that certain books we're reading pull us in, and some we struggle over, but we look at our kids and get mad at them.
Right.
Not being able to sustain that level of attention. So
and the motivation piece, because they go hand in hand, and dopamine levels for teens drop in half. And so it's not till usually around end of sophomore year for boys, a little bit sooner for girls, that their dopamine levels will start to creep back up slowly. And so they'll be able to gain a little more pleasure with tasks that are typically mundane. And there's a lot of schoolwork that's mundane. It's just pencil and paper, busy work. There's lots of homework, repetitive, and it's really hard for them to sustain their attention. So part of it is helping your kid understand, okay, let's start with the subjects that you like. What are the subjects that motivate you? And which ones are harder? Then you help them map out a plan. Maybe you pick the homework. So first you focus on the organization. Okay, what's your plan for organizing your homework every night? My daughter she just qualified for an IEP, and the first thing they gave her was an organizational checklist for every day, so that she can look at it and we can look at it. Let's make sure we got things organized. Then maybe you could start with something you like. Pick the subject you like. That'll get you kind of going, your dopamine levels up. Then let's throw in one that's not as fun for you. Let's crank that up, and then take a little break. So let's have a break, a movement break, some oxygen. Exercise is great, 10-minute break. There's research that people that look at kitten and puppy videos for 10 minutes on YouTube are more productive for the next hour. So that's fine, but with a teen, you got to make sure they turn it off. They're not so great at that. But then you throw in something a little harder when they come back, maybe a little more pleasurable. And so you're trying to mix things up for them in blocks that will hopefully help them keep their motivation going. And sometimes
that whole story assumes that my kid is okay with me being involved in their process.
Well, we'll talk about that next. But the other thing is you have to sometimes just empathize with your teenager. They really don't experience what's called hedonic pleasure. So I can load the dishwasher and get it started, and I feel good that I've tidied up the kitchen. That does not get a teenager going. They need big excitement to kind of get going and feel something. And so they're bored. They get really bored, and they're just like struggling to keep awake in classes. So sometimes it's just empathizing with them about how they're feeling. Now, you might want to get somebody else to help. So what we did at the start, as soon as last spring, I still have PTSD from last spring's online school.
We all do.
Almost failed 8th grade. I mean, it was just such a nightmare. Now, we're finding with Denver Public Schools, it's a pretty good system they have. But as soon as they announced it was going to be online only and not in school, and we didn't have the IEP set up, I set her up, and a couple of my associates had teenagers, and we set up a little learning environment down here at my office, down in the kitchen, where the students could work. And then we hired a college kid. So we got a college student who went to the school where I consult, and she comes over a couple hours a day and just makes sure that where the kids are at with their homework. Are they online? If they've been going to class, and helps them get organized. Now, the two of the kids then went back to school, so it's just been my daughter. And then we got her the IEP. They got her in a resource room for organization. So now we have 2 days a week she gets to go to their organization class, and 2 days a week the college student comes over just to work with her. I typically tell most parents, try to find either school people, the resource people, or someone else, a tutor, organizational coach, to help be the interface between you and your kids, if you can. Because
if you have an IEP, there should be somebody at school that you can get, right?
Yeah, and we were really impressed. We met the resource teacher just yesterday. They had back to school night online. Fabulous. So they'll have that, or you can get that with a 504 and IEP.
Okay, so if I'm struggling with my kid, I should try to outsource it, and hopefully the school has some way to help and do that. If I'm walking around as a parent just feeling angry and frustrated with my kid. Like, for example,
Oh, really? I've never felt that.
well, I mean, there's just this sense that like they're not doing what they should be doing, and that doing it is in their control, and choosing not to do it is in their control.
I know. And if I had a meter, I'd be a millionaire if I had a meter that could tell parents what's driving your kid's behavior. And when you, like, for both my wife and I are very efficient people. So when we see our daughter just not really doing anything, we just are like lit up. And so we really have to slow ourselves down. If your kid's going to be home or doing the homeschool, online school, and you don't have anybody else that can help you with it, a couple things I'd recommend is don't have them do it in the bedroom. If they're in that bedroom, chances are they're going to get lost, and they're going to be on YouTube. They're going to be gaming. They're going out a dark hole. So I'd have them out at a dining room table, kitchen table, someplace with light, and they have to get up at the same time every day. They have to be attending classes. You have to get dressed. My daughter told me 2 of her classmates got kicked out because the boys weren't wearing shirts, and the teacher's like, that's not acceptable. So they need to be dressed, attending when they're supposed to be. The other thing I would tell you is don't chase after your teenager. That's a dynamic that's always going to go wrong. So if you're constantly, hey, did you get that math assignment? Susan, have you got that turned in yet? Did you go to that class yet? They're immediately going to react to that and get defensive and upset, or they're going to, yeah, I did, whatever, I got it done, Mom, you don't have to ask again, right? What you want to try is create it so that they come to you to show you they've had things done. So at my daughter's school, they're very good with the online school with updating assignments and telling you whether there's missing assignments and what the grade is. And they update it every day. So I could be the parent that pulls it up myself, looks at it, finds the missing assignments, gets upset, and then yells, come in here, we need to look at this. Why didn't you do these assignments? Well, that discussion right off the bat is going downhill. Better say, hey, honey, would you mind, come on, bring your computer in, let's take a look at your online school. Let's take a look at those. Okay, and then bite your tongue, but have them show it to you. And then just, well, how are you feeling about what, do you notice any patterns here? Okay, seems to be a couple missing assignments in that one class. Okay, what can we do? Have you emailed the teacher? Let's try that. So you want to shift the dynamic from the dog chasing the cat. The way you train a dog not to chase a cat, and I had to do this once. You let the cat sit, you keep the dog on a leash, and every time the dog doesn't try to go after it, you give it a treat. And eventually the cat will come and approach the dog. You want your teenagers, the cat, you want them to come to you versus you're being the dog and they're running.
Okay, so you just wrote a book, Wired and Connected. How much is technology, like the distraction of technology, weighing into a lot of these problems?
It's been huge, and I never would have guessed how much it got out of control this spring and summer. So I was saying back in the spring, at the start of this, I was recommending parents, okay, double your amount of time. So usually you get like 20, 30 minutes a day during the school week, maybe 2 blocks of time on the weekends. And there's reasons for that. And then when the pandemic started, I said, hey, why don't you give them 2 blocks each day and maybe 4 20, 30-minute blocks on the weekends. Well, that just blew out. Everybody caved in. And it was just overwhelming for parents. And so my daughter spent a lot more time on social media. We don't have that. What's a TikTok, but not the Snapchat. But kids were spending hours and hours and hours every day. And if you got a teen guy, the 2 main things all summer, gaming and pornography. That was their 2 main sources of comfort for most of the summer and spring. So the genie got out of the bottle. You need to get it back in. And the reason it's so hard is all the gaming and social media is designed to capture that dopamine system. So when you're playing these games, and I think Fortnite I read had something like 200 different dopamine juice things added in. So, there's a package. I got to get that package and see what I got. Well, when you see the package, you're playing, there could be ammunition in there, a new weapon. Your dopamine levels just shoot up in the pleasure system and the novelty area. And it tells the brain, focus on that, focus on that, focus on that. So as your dopamine levels go higher and higher playing, you get more and more focused on it and what's called hyper-focused. And so you want your dopamine levels to be in the right area, which they're high enough so you can focus, but not so high that you're just zoned into one thing. And gaming for past a half hour, if you go past about a half hour, and the social media, if you keep it on all the time, it increases your dopamine levels about 16 times. Same as marijuana, actually. And then when the kids finally stop playing, it's serious crash. They're moody, irritable, not fun to be around. So what I'm really telling parents now that school's back in, we got to rein in the electronic stuff and the social media stuff.
So Jennifer asks a question, any tips for pulling back on the gaming time for a middle school boy? And the other thing I'll add with it is that, the goal of saying we've got to pull back on it, I think many parents agree with that. The tactics of how to do it when you're talking about middle school and high school kids,
right.
It's really challenging.
It is challenging. First you would set up, and I do have a various list. I do some lectures and webinars on, it's called Hijack, the Brain on Electronics. If you go to my website, parents go to my website, craignippenberg.com, and you should be able to find one of those webinars on there or a link to the handouts that I have. But I would start, so you would start with, hey, here's your schedule you got a middle school boy. You're going to have a half hour a day after your homework's done and not an hour before bedtime. So you can sit down and then they need to come and show you that their homework's completed or turned in. Then we can say, okay, you can have your half hour now. And again, it can't be not an hour before bedtime. It interferes with sleep. Then on the weekends, you could do like 2 half-hour blocks. You could also join in playing with them. There's some research out of Canada that parents who gamed for 20 to 30 minutes with their kids had closer relationships with their kids because you're in their world, right? Now, they're probably going to beat you at the game every time, but you're in their world, you're enjoying, you're laughing, you're having fun with them. So that's certainly okay to be doing that.
The other piece of it, you're probably going to have more compassion because we're going to get sucked in also in the same way if you've ever done a slot machine or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, your dopamine levels are going to start. I got addicted to Risk, the board game, when it was on a floppy disk, and I was like playing it every night till 2 a.m. I finally had to quit cold turkey. It really takes away your time perspective. So that's the other thing. When you set up the time, you say, okay, you started. I tell your kids, you set the alarm. Set an alarm on your computer or your phone for when the 30 minutes up, or set it for 25 minutes so that when it goes off, you know you have 5 minutes left to finish that level, or to finish, like on Fortnite, it's like 20-minute games. You'll kind of know. So you want to hand as much management over to them as possible versus you coming in and saying, okay, your time's up, time to turn it off. Because the kid is going to say, wait, I have to finish level. I can't let my buddies down. I can't leave right now. They'll be all upset. They'll never want me on their team again. It's them trying to be aware of, hey, it's coming, and I need to turn it off at a certain point. That's where it gets a little tricky for most kids. I have had some parents who just come in and just turn it off themselves. I've had parents who keep the modems and routers in their room, and they can switch them off if they need to. You know, with smartphones, you can still play. But you would want to build in an incentive. You say, look, if you can turn it off on time and when you're supposed to by yourself, we'll consider after a week or two giving you more time. Maybe you could have 2 blocks. But if you don't, then you're going to lose it the next day. If you pull it away from them, you could say, you know, one day you lose it the next day. If you don't turn it off when you're asked, or we have to ask more than 2 or 3 times, then you're going to lose it tomorrow. I'd be careful about going over too many days. One of the things that can happen with teenagers is you say, okay, you lose it tomorrow. They get upset and they say something foul. And then you say, well, now it's a week, right? And then they get more upset and they say something. Then you say, now it's a month. And you know full well you're probably not going to stick with it for a month. So you got to be really careful. Also,
the thing is that we're trying to raise them to be able to monitor themselves when you're not there.
They're going to be going to college.
So this is like an opportunity to sit and try and talk about how everything that Craig said about the brain and how these are being built to capitalize on that. And their goal is to get you to sit there as long as possible. So it has to be a conversation. And I just want to bring this comment up because I want Jennifer to know that Craig is the minority. When you don't have to be embarrassed because I believe truly that most people are exactly in your situation.
Oh, they are. and my daughter on the TikTok thing and sneaking it, and we were too. So don't be embarrassed. And I've told every parent I have a lecture tomorrow on how to survive the zombie apocalypse. And the first time I say is, and it's without losing your spit. And the first one is was impossible not to. And you should have no shame or guilt from parenting during the last 8 months. We are all fragile parents. We're all struggling. We all did the best we can. One of the things that if you can get your teen to learn about it. So I do my webinars, now it's on webinars, and it used to be in person, but I have a webinar on the brain being hijacked by video games and social media, and it's for families. So I just did about 2 weeks ago for Cherry Creek School District here in Denver, one of our larger districts, and it was parents with their teenagers and their kids on, and we went over the brain, and I have role plays that show what's happening to the brain. And when I've done it in person, I get some incredible feedback from teenagers who are like, I had no idea that's what was going on.
Yeah, it's important to bring them into the story. So Egypt says, my daughter is 10 and plays for hours. I set limits during the week and weekend times. How can I get her to spend less time in the video games? Are there any good alternatives to video games?
Well, for me, the big thing I like for kids is free play outside, is getting outside and having some free play and just saying, out of the house. When I was a kid, we got kicked out of the house all the time, and we didn't have video games to play. We were just outside, running the neighborhood, finding things to do. Taking up different hobbies is a good thing.
Especially at 10 when you have a little more control.
Right. Yeah. They can go outside and do stuff. Or, my other response, if I ever said to my mom on board, she'd say, oh, well, you might want to find something to do before I find something for you to do. And we knew that would mean like scrubbing the shower tiles. So I was pretty quick to get outside.
Also, I just want to share, Tanisha has a great tip, Egypt, which she, every time her kid reads a book, he gets 15 minutes of game time.
Nice. Love it. So put some
carrots.
Yeah, that's great. So put some carrots out there that will motivate them to do some other things. Okay.
So now I want to just talk before, this will be our last question, unless somebody else has a question to ask. How do we shift our mindset as parents to default to the compassion instead of the angry?
Yeah, the analogy I was thinking about, it's sort of like when your child was a preschooler and you weren't in the room, and let's say they're crying and you hear them cry and you come into the room and the first thing you do is you're going to, cuddle them, and you're not going to do this with a teenager, but you're going to say, what's wrong, honey? What happened? So you're querying the child. It's a query, right? In a soft voice. And then you're trying to help them figure that out, or they got a boo-boo or whatever. So what you're trying to do is, rather than just reaching a judgment and getting mad immediately, is to just take a couple deep breaths and kind of go, oh, well, tell me what was going on there. Oh, I see a couple missing assignments. Huh. So you want to try to use that same query, soft approach versus just going to a judgment and erupting. Now, I will tell you, I had a situation this morning with my daughter where I erupted. It's tough. It is really tough. And I still have PTSD from last spring. And it was like, I'm missing assignment again. It really is hard. So you got to bite your tongue as much as you can and just try a query. What's going on? You seem kind of upset, right? I got an email from the teacher. Yeah. Did you see it? I'll forward you the email. So on that one too, if you get an email from the teacher, forward it to your kid first before you talk to him, so that you're setting up that link between the kid and the teacher. But I think the phrase calm and listen a lot, be slow to anger, that works really well with teens. I had a sticky note for a couple years, and it just said mirror, and it was in the kitchen where I keep my computer. And what it reminds me to do, and my daughter came from, she's adopted, she had a pretty rough upbringing, and so she can get into some emotions and go pretty deep. And I used to react to them far more, but then I remembered, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be a mirror for her so she can see herself. If I react, she's going to be thinking it's me. She's going to be, oh, he's upset, it's his problem. And teenagers love to put the blame on their parents. If you let them put the blame on you, they'll take it. And if you overreact or you get upset, they're just going to go, oh, my dad's such a jerk, my mom's so this, whatever. But I put up a sticky note that said mirror, and it just reminded me to bite my tongue and just go, oh, it's hard, isn't it, honey? I know it's hard. It's hard being responsible for yourself. That's a hard thing for a teenager. And I just try to mirror back. Not that it's worked during COVID. But
it has potential. It definitely has potential.
It worked for 2 years, and then COVID started. It's just the cat got out of the bag on that one. But
well, so also, the biting our tongue is so hard, and especially hard during COVID. But one of the things that when I can keep my temper down and approach it that way, I'm often so moved by the response to the question, "Hey, what's going on?"
Yeah.
Because I have written a whole different story in my head, and now I've created a dialogue with somebody who I didn't really know that's what was going on.
That's what was actually going on. But you have to slow down. Could I tell a quick story? That's
Sure.
a great example. Years ago, I seen this teenager. He had ADHD. He was taking driver's ed at the public school. You know, where you put 2 or 3 kids in a car and they're doing the driving. And he was supposed to go after school, and one week he didn't show up. So his mom was upset and said, you know, Jeff, you have to remember to go to the class. Yes, Mom. And she thought it was strictly the ADD, organizational memory problems, right? Next week comes, doesn't go to class. She gets on him again. You have to remember, write it down, put it in your planner. Next week comes, she reminds him before school, put it's in his planner. He knows he needs to go. He doesn't show up again. And this time she didn't react when he got home. And she said, honey, what's going on? And he said, Mom, I'm so nervous because I get distracted easy. And I'm worried that when I'm driving, I'll get distracted and there's kids in the back seat and they're all going to make fun of me. And he was worried about getting taunted and made fun of. And his mom said, you know what? I'll take you out of that class. We'll get you in with AAA. You'll get a private lesson. Don't worry about it. And he learned to drive.
Yeah, but look at how that moment was such an insight into something really painful for this kid.
That was in his heart.
Yeah.
And she just assumed automatically it was the other. Now, I will tell you, there's an old saying, sometimes a rock's a rock and sometimes it's not. So for that young man, sometimes it was just a lack of organizational stuff.
Yeah.
But there's times when it's not. It's something deeper going on there. There's some emotion there. And that's what taking a moment to say.
I think mostly there's something else going on, and that and the charge to us as parents that we put this out there from your teen all the time, the charge of biting your tongue, knowing your own emotions, that is life. Like we are going to mess that up all the time. And so I just want to put out there that I always think parenting is the most forgiving profession. Like when you mess up, you apologize and you move on.
Yeah, that's I had a series with my daughter this spring where I found out about she was failing one of her classes a week before graduation, and I got a little upset that night. And the next morning I went in and I said, honey, I want to apologize for last night. You know, I got a little too angry, raised my voice too much, and I don't like doing that. I hope you'll forgive me. And she looked at me and said, that's okay, Daddy. It's the Corona thing. We're all stressed. Now, part of me wanted to say, but you could have done your homework.
No, Craig, wrong message.
I took it as a golden moment and just accepted it. Thank you, honey.
Okay, so I'm going to say thank you, Craig, for being here. And I want to end on the note that we are all doing our best right now. Everybody's showing up here and watching this video and this interview. We are all trying in very trying times to do our best. And your engagement means that you are already a great parent, and you should pat yourself on the back and keep trying. So good luck to everyone.
All right. Thank you, Susan.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.